Today is April 8th. Welcome to Big Book Daily. My name is Rob. I am an alcoholic. It's a thrill, honor, and joy to be here with you today as we journey through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. Today, out of the Big Book, we are going to continue part 2 of our personal stories. They Stopped in Time, story number 2, Fear of Fear, pages 289 through 292. And out of the 12 and 12, we are going to continue our journey through step 12 by reading page 107. So I hope you all are doing well today. Life is good over here. I've got a giant cup of coffee in my Star Wars Grogu cup. So the force is strong with me this morning. So let's go ahead and get to the good stuff. So if you recall from yesterday's reading, for this personal story, number 2, the subheading was, "This lady was cautious. She decided she wouldn't let herself go in her drinking, and she would never take that morning drink." So, as you recall from the very first page, we see that this lady is going to meetings for her husband. And finally, she runs into somebody she knows that says, "Hey, are you one of us Souses too?" And she goes, "Oh, goodness, no. My husband is. He's in there." And then she gets to know this lady. She says, "She told me her name, and I said, I know you from somewhere." Turned out that this woman had been at high school with our narrator's daughter. So not even, a day later, this is within the same day, it says, "As we walked back through the hall, I, for the first time in my life, said to another human being, I'm having trouble with my drinking too." So for whatever reason, this woman, our narrator here, does reveal that she might have a problem. So we are going to continue with that thought on page 290. And again, we're going to be reading pages 290 through 292. "This woman and her husband are both in AA, and she said to me, 'Oh, but you're not the alcoholic, it's your husband.' I said, 'Yeah.' She said, 'How long have you been married?' I said, 27 years. She said, 27 years to an alcoholic? How'd you ever stand it?' And I thought, now here's a nice sympathetic soul. This is for me. I said, 'Well, I stood it to keep the home together and for the children's sake.' She said, 'Yeah, I know. You're just a martyr, aren't you?' I walked away from that woman, grinding my teeth and cursing under my breath. Fortunately, I didn't say a word to George on the way home. But that night, I tried to go to sleep and I thought, you're some martyr, Jane. Let's look at the record. And when I looked at it, I knew that I was just as much a drunk as George was, if not worse. I nudged George in the morning and I said, "I'm in." And he said, "Oh, I knew you'd make it." I started drinking nearly 30 years ago, right after I was married. My first drinking spree was on corn liquor, and I was allergic to it, believe me. I was deathly sick every time I took a drink. But we had to do a lot of entertaining. My husband liked to have a good time. I was very young, and I wanted to have a good time too. The only way I knew to do it was to drink right along with them. I got into terrific trouble with my drinking. I was afraid, and I had made up my mind that I would never get drunk. So I was watchful and careful. We had a small child and I loved her dearly, so that held me back for quite a bit in my drinking career. But even so, every time I drank, I seemed to get in trouble. I always wanted to drink too much, so I was watchful, always watchful, counting my drinks. If we were invited to a formal party and I knew they were only going to have 1 or 2 drinks, I wouldn't have any. I was being very cagey because I knew that if I did take 1 or 2, I might want to take 5 or 6 or 7 or 8. I did stay fairly good for a few years, but I wasn't happy, and I didn't ever let myself go in my drinking. After my son, our second child, came along, and as he became school age and was away at school most of the time, something happened. I really started drinking with a bang. I never went to a hospital. I never lost a job. I was never in jail. And unlike many others, I never took a drink in the morning. I needed a drink, but I was afraid to take a morning drink because I didn't want to be a drunk. I became a drunk anyway, but I was scared to death to take that morning drink. I was accused of it many times when I went to play bridge in the afternoon, but I really never did take a morning drink. I was still woozy from the night before. I should have lost my husband, and I think that the only fact that he was an alcoholic too kept us together. No one else would have stayed with me. Many women who have reached the stage that I had reached in my drinking have lost husbands, children, homes, everything they hold dear. I've been very fortunate in many ways. The important thing I lost was my own self-respect. I could feel fear coming into my life. I couldn't face people. I couldn't look them straight in the eyes, although I had always been a self-possessed, brazen person. I'd brazen anything out. I'd lied like a trooper to get out of many scrapes. But I felt fear coming into my life, and I couldn't cope with it. I got so that I hid quite a bit of the time, wouldn't answer the phone, stayed by myself as much as I could. I noticed that I was avoiding all my social friends except for the bridge club. I couldn't keep up with any of my other friends, and I wouldn't go to anyone's house unless I knew they drank as heavily as I did. I never knew it was the first drink that did it. I thought I was losing my mind when I realized that I couldn't stop drinking. That frightened me terribly. George tried many times to go on the wagon. If I had been sincere in what I thought I wanted more than anything else in life, a sober husband and a happy, contented home, I would have gone on the wagon with him. I did try for a day or two, but something would always come up that would throw me. It'd be a little thing, the rugs being crooked, or any little silly thing that I think was wrong, and off I'd go, drinking. And sneaking my drinks. I had bottles hidden all over the apartment. I didn't think my children knew about it, but I found out that they did. It's surprising how we think we fool everybody in our drinking. I reached a stage where I couldn't go into my apartment without a drink. It didn't bother me anymore whether George was drinking or not. I had to have liquor, and sometimes I would lie on the bathroom floor deathly sick, praying that I'd die, and praying to God as I had always prayed to him when I was drinking. Dear God, get me out of this one and I'll never do it again. And then I'd say, God, don't pay attention to me. You know I'll do it tomorrow. The very same thing. All right, some pretty interesting stuff here. We will definitely come back to this in just a minute. All right, out of the 12 and 12, we are covering step 12, which is having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. We tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. And yesterday we were talking about the spiritual awakening a little bit. It says, when a man or woman has a spiritual awakening, the most important meaning of it is that he has now become able to do, feel, and believe that which he could not do before on his unaided strength and resources alone. So we're just going to continue that thought on page 107. He has been granted a gift which amounts to a new state of consciousness and being. He has been set on a path which tells him that he's really going somewhere, that life is not a dead end, not something to be endured or mastered. In a very real sense, he has been transformed, because he has laid hold of a source of strength which, in one way or another, he had hitherto denied himself. He finds himself in possession of a degree of honesty, tolerance, unselfishness, peace of mind, and love of which he had thought himself quite incapable. What he has received is a free gift. And yet, usually, at least in some small part, he has made himself ready to receive it. AA's manner of making ready to receive this gift lies in the practice of the 12 steps in our program. So let's consider briefly what we've been trying to do up to this point. Step 1 showed us an amazing paradox. We found that we were totally unable to be rid of the alcohol obsession until we first admitted that we were powerless over it. Step 2, we saw that since we cannot restore ourselves to sanity, some higher power must necessarily do so if we were to survive. Consequently, in step 3, we turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. For the time being, we who were atheists or agnostic discovered that our own group, or AA as a whole, would suffice as a higher power. Beginning with step 4, we commenced to search out the things in ourselves which brought to us physical, moral, and spiritual bankruptcy. We made a searching and fearless moral inventory. Looking at step 5, we decided that an inventory taken alone wouldn't be enough. Alright, my friends, we will stop there in the reading of the 12 and 12. Going back to the big book real fast, my heart goes out to this woman. You know, I wonder if this mutual acquaintance that happens to meet this woman in the AA meeting, I wonder if she could just see right through our narrator here. Because, buddy, she gives her a little bit of sarcasm and going, "Oh, you're just a martyr, aren't you?" And, buddy, as much as that ticks off our narrator, she starts to think about that. Here, she starts to see some people in the fellowship that maybe it's not an us and them mentality. Maybe they're very, very similar to her. And they can spot the malady in our narrator. And now she's finally realizing she has just as serious, if not even more serious, problem with drinking than her husband did. So that little seed has been planted, and we can see that's beginning to grow here. She's starting to realize my life is unmanageable. Now, God bless her, she has been determined not to drink in the morning, and so far that hasn't happened. But she's already, the gears are starting to turn that I might be seriously an alcoholic. Even though, once again, like our previous narrator, she didn't serve any jail time or anything like that, but she's having a hard time stopping. As a matter of fact, and I've done this, she's praying in the middle of one of her drunks. "God, please help me not to do this again. If you'll get me out of this one, I'll never do it again." But then she follows up her own prayer. She knows that's not true. She says, "God, don't pay any attention to me. You know I'll do it tomorrow." The very same thing. I can relate to that, and I can also relate to the fear. Fear is a powerful thing, and perception really is reality. I never quite understood that saying until I lived it. One of the biggest things that was brought to my attention when I first joined the fellowships by people I really respected that had good sobriety in their lives. They said, "Rob, you are way too hard on yourself. You hold yourself to an expectation that nobody can live up to." And they're right. And because of that, I was always so fearful of what others thought of me, and always so fearful that I wasn't good enough. And sobriety has really helped me with that. Doing these 12 steps has really helped me with that. But let me tell you something, this has been a slow burn. You know, this is something I still have to work on, because I can pick up that fear pretty quickly if I'm not careful, if I'm not working this program the way I should, or the way I've done it in the past that has been successful for me. So it's a nice reminder here to work on things, you know. So I can certainly relate to this woman and her struggle with fear here. So that's all we have for today, my friends. As always, I don't speak on behalf of AA or any other sect or denomination. I am just a friend in recovery, and it really is a joy just to read this book each day. I'm picking up a lot. I'm learning a lot. It's helping me. And I hope and pray that it'll help one other person out there. If you're sober today, you are a miracle. Remember that. We have 24 hours we've been given. That's all we need to focus on today. Let's just not drink today. Hope you all have a good one, and I look forward to seeing you back here tomorrow.